Good evening. Thank you all for joining us today. We're very pleased and honored to have an industry legend with us today. Dr. Vint Cerf is Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist for Google. He is the co-designer of the TCP/IP protocols and also considered architect and co-founder of the Internet. He has served in executive positions at ICANN, the Internet Society, MCI, the Corporation for National Research Initiatives, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. A former Stanford professor and former member of the U.S. National Science Board, he is also the past president of the Association for Computing Machinery and serves in advisory capacities at NIST, DOE, NSF, NRO, and NASA. He earned his Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics at Stanford and MS and PhD at UCLA, degrees in computer science. He is a member of both the U.S. National Academies of Science and Engineering, the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists, and the Worshipful Company of Stationers. Vint Cerf is a recipient of numerous awards for his work. So many, it's almost impossible to say them all. But I would just like to let you know he's received the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom, the U.S. National Medal of Technology, the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering, the Prince of Asturias Award, the Japan Prize, the Charles Stark Draper Award, the ACM Turing Award, the Marconi Prize, the IEEE Medal of Honor, the Legion d'Honneur, and the Vint Futures Grand Prize, and the Franklin Medal. He is a foreign member of the British Royal Society and Swedish Academy of Engineering, and he holds 29 honorary degrees. So without further ado, I'd just like to introduce Dr. Vint Cerf. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you very, very much, and good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure and an honor to address you tonight. I'm here representing, in part, the leadership panel of the Internet Governance Forum, which brings its greetings to you and also its thanks and congratulations for the work that you're undertaking. It's our belief that civil society voices must be heard in a multi-stakeholder policy development environment, so that policies that affect the way in which the internet is delivered and operates benefits from civil society's perspective. So we thank you very much for the work that you continue to pursue.
Thank you. I think we have another question here in the room. If you have a little bit more time, Vint.
Absolutely.
Yes, I do.
Great.
Thank you very much. Hi, this is Abhijit. I represent an organization called Vruksh. My question is more about something that you spoke about, connectivity. I'd love to understand your thoughts around experiments similar to Starlink, which enable rural connectivity and providing digital and equitable access to the internet in low resource zones. A second part of the question would be what are your thoughts in terms of this, the decentralization of the internet also happening in the past few years and gaining traction? Do we see that as the future of the internet in some ways, where it becomes more from what we see as a centralized structure to a completely decentralized? So, yeah. Thank you.
So, thank you. Those are two very good questions. Let me take the centralization, decentralization first. I'm sure many of you might remember that in the history of the internet, at the beginning, we had lots and lots of time-sharing systems scattered all over the place, and it was very decentralized, and the network allowed anyone to get access to any of those time-sharing systems, as long as you had login privileges and the like. And then as time has gone on, what has happened is that an economy of scale has led to concentration in the form of data centers and networks of data centers. Google is one of those. We have a number of data centers around the world. They're all interconnected by a very, very powerful undersea network, fiber-based network. And that's true for other organizations as well that offer essentially cloud-based services. So what's driving that is literally an economy of scale. It turns out that operating a small data center takes a certain amount of staffing. Operating a bigger one does not take a linear increase in the amount of staffing if you've automated the processes enough, and that, of course, is what's happened. There is this pendulum, of course, swings back and forth, and some of you will be aware of 5G and the plans for 6G, and both of those have inherent in their architectures a new proliferation of what's called edge computing, which sort of goes between you and the data center. There's something else that's closer to you than the data center is. And that's a place where processing could take place. It might be in the base stations, for example, of the mobile system. It might even be embedded in a Wi-Fi access point. What's the reason for having that processing capability closer to you? Well, it's lower latency, basically. And for a number of applications, for example, real-time translation, you might want the least possible latency that you can achieve. And that means pushing some of the computation closer and closer to the user if it's not actually in their laptop or in their mobile or in their pad. So that's where I see the shifting from centralization and concentration really to more decentralization again. In terms of access to the internet, we see an increasing number of alternative ways of getting to the internet. The low Earth orbiting satellites, of course, are some of the most recent evolutions. It may be the case eventually that you can't escape access to the internet because companies like Starlink and OneWeb and others will end up providing access to every square inch of the planet to the internet. Of course, it's one thing to have the functional capability. It's another thing to make it affordable and also to make it perform sufficiently to do certain kinds of applications. Historically, costs have tended to be driven out partly by competition and partly by the introduction of new technologies. And also the alternatives for access have proliferated over time. At one point, it was straight dial-up through the telephone system. Then dedicated facilities came along from both telephone and cable companies. Then we got Wi-Fi. Then we got 3G, 4G, 5G, and someday 6G. And now we have the low Earth orbiting satellites. And if any of you have been following fiber optic subsea cable development, it's been astonishing how rapidly proliferating that has been. Islands in the Pacific and the Atlantic are getting fiber connections, which I never imagined would be economically possible. So once again, driving the economy, economic aspects of this drive possibilities. So those are all things that come to my mind as I think about improved access to the internet. It feels to me as if it's going to continue to be more and more available, and I hope more and more affordable.
We have two more questions in the room, and then we'll wrap up if that's all right with you.
Okay.
Sir, my name is Siddharth Vinayak Behel, and I am a student studying computer science at Amrita University. You had spoken about how misinformation is rampant on the internet and how it's difficult to really stop that kind of content from being posted in the first place. How ultimately the only thing we can really do is to be aware. So my question is, in order to stop the spread of misinformation from affecting people young and old, from whatever background, what can we as students do to actively take a role?
So, I think I implied something earlier on, and that was called critical thinking, where you teach people to ask questions about where did the information come from that they're exposed to. We try at Google, and I imagine others do as well, to rate the content that we recover from the World Wide Web during our search, for example. But that's only one means of access to the net, and that's one avenue. But you can imagine in social media, often there is no filter at all. You just get whatever it is people are putting up. So again, we might want to say, is there some way in which the various avenues through which information flows could introduce some kind of provenance, some kind of verifiable origin? We're not verifying that the information is correct, but just verifying where did it come from. And at least that's the beginning of trying to evaluate the utility of the information. We often will say, well, what about crowdsourcing? Where you've heard of a book perhaps called The Wisdom of Crowds. I am a little suspicious of this because now we have the possibility of many parties in the crowd are actually chatbots, or they are, fake people. And we're entering into a very peculiar period in our sociological history where it's becoming hard to tell the difference between a program and a person. And some of you will be familiar with the so-called Turing test. We're at the point now where it's becoming harder and harder to tell the difference between a computer program and a person interacting on the net. So we're back to insisting on source indications. Where did the information come from? Can we hold parties accountable for their sharing of that information? None of this is perfect, and that's why I'm such a big fan of the wetware idea, to just train people to ask questions about where information came from and to seek out any corroborating evidence before they accept anything at face value.
Okay, and our last question from the room.
Hello, sir. This is Anshuman Hazarika from Assam. I'm representing Information Sharing Analysis Center. So my question is very non-technical. So you are Vince, you are the god of internet. You are the founder of internet. So what does it feel like to be you? That is the first question. Yes, sir. And the second question is, what is your normal day-to-day schedule is like? What is your normal day-to-day schedule? Thanks. Thank you, sir.
Well, that's very kind of you. First of all, I hope every one of you understands that, I know this history because I've lived it. And believe me, I'm not the only person that you should either congratulate or blame for the internet. Certainly my colleague, Bob Kahn, who started the program and invited me to join it, deserves just as much attention. Both of us, though, I think, see the internet as a remarkable success because so many other people wanted to help make it happen. And the people today, even now, 50 years later, are actively contributing to the continued evolution of the system, its functional capability, it's trying to improve its safety and security and the like. So when you're saying, what does it feel like to be me? Well, I feel deeply grateful that I got to participate in creating something that so many other people also wanted to see happen and today still want to improve on. And so it feels more like I've been swept by a wave of excitement and determination. I don't see this as a personal accomplishment at all. It's the accomplishment of many, many hands and continues to benefit from that. So that's sort of where I end up wanting very much for people to understand that the internet is still something that they can contribute to. Every one of you in the room has an opportunity to make it a better place and a more useful infrastructure. And of course, as you can see, layers of new things were added, like the World Wide Web, which sat down on top of TCP/IP and is the way in which so much of what we do today is affected. And I'm sure there are going to be other layers and new protocols coming along. For example, one that replaced TCP is called QUIC, coming out of Google, and it's a more efficient and more elaborate mechanism for end-to-end connectivity. And I expect to see more and more of those things evolve. Some of you might be aware that I've also been working on an interplanetary extension of the internet in order to support manned and robotic exploration, and now the commercialization of space. That too is in our future, literally coming within the next few years. First landings on new landings on the moon, and some commercialization of mining, for example, will all happen within this decade. So it's all very exciting. I wish I could be here, to see what happens in another 50 years. I won't be, but some of you will.
Thank you so much, Vint. So on behalf of the chair of the C20, Mata Amritananda Mai, and on behalf of our engagement group on technology, security, and transparency, as well as Amrita University here, we're in Coimbatore, India, we'd just like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for spending this time with us on your Saturday. We really appreciate that. And it's just been such an honor and a pleasure to hear from you. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. And we'll take some of these great recommendations and thoughts, discuss them over the next day, because we can still give some policy recommendations. So once again, thank you for your input. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye. So I think there might be some announcements about the remainder of the program. I think we have a lot of excitement.